LJ Sports Bar is back once again. Shea McClellin and Shane Williams-Rhodes, two Boise State greats, joining me today once again. And we got a loss to react to, a game to preview. Before we move forward, though, we have to look to the past. Boise State blowing a 21-point lead on the road at UCF. I'm going to ask Shea first. Do you know the last time Boise State blew a 3-score lead on the road to a non-Power 5 opponent? Do you know the answer, Shea?
Maybe in the 1980s.
It actually wasn't that long ago, and you might have even played in the game. I hope you don't punch me the next time you see me, but it was the Nevada game back in 2010, the last time Boise State blew a 3-score lead against a non-Power 5 opponent. Either way, that was over a decade ago, so it's been a while. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but what was your guys' take of the season opener? Boise State going down to UCF and losing 36-31, and as I previously mentioned, Shane, a 21-point blown lead on the road.
I think the game how we, us three would. I think we went out. I think defense were game in the fin got us rolling. That's why we had that 21-point lead. But football is a long game, man. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So, in the end, we weren't able to stop the run. We weren't able to ball ourselves. And like we said, if we weren't able to run, obviously not having Halani played a role in that. We also, I feel like we look a little rough right now on the D-line, not being able to stop the run or not being able to get any kind of pressure on the quarterback. I mean, we could have had Shea back there throwing the ball. He would have been able to make plays as long as that guy was back there. So I think those were the two biggest things that stood out to me. And I honestly think that I thought the DBs would be a bit more suspect, but I think they played well with what they were given, on the front end.
I think we go back and we look at this, Shane, and I kind of agree with you, man. Like, I know that Dylan Gabriel passed for 318 yards and he had 4 scores. But if you go back and look, I mean, there were some stellar grabs by UCF wide receivers. And, I mean, all things being said, at the end of the day, I actually thought the secondary played okay in that game. I think the lack of a consistent pass rush made it a long day for the DBs at times. But more than anything, my biggest concern, even more so than Boise State's inability to run the ball, which maybe we'll get to in a moment, was their inability to stop the rushing attack that UCF had last week. 255 yards. I mean, Shea, when you were here, did you guys have any type of performance where you gave up 255 on the ground? And if so, what was the reaction the next day?
Man, I hope not. I don't think we did. If we did, we probably should have been running decks the whole next game. I mean, that's probably the main thing as a defense you got to do is stop the run, and I think that's what defenses emphasize the most is stopping the run. So, it was not a great game on the ground on either sides of the ball, and like Shane said, man, D-line is looking really suspect right now. I was getting so frustrated during the game. I mean, dudes getting stuck on blocks and, not working moves. Man, it was hard to watch from D-line's perspective. And, like you said, I think the DBs did a good job. The safeties were pretty good and from what I saw, but just no D-line. Like, we could not get a 4-man rush at all. And, like, if we consistently can't do that, then, D coordinator Danielson's going to have to find other ways to bring pressure, and that's going to open up gaps in the defense. So we got to find a way to bring 4-man pressure, and that if that has to do with stunts, games, we got to figure something out for sure.
Yeah, you go on the flip side of that, and at times in the second half, it seemed like UCF was getting to Hank Bachmeier with 3- and 4-man fronts, or bringing only 3 or 4 at a time. So that was frustrating. But I mean, just to go a little further into it, Shea. I mean, like, is it fixable? Or I mean, like, because if it is, then that's okay. Like, does that make sense? I mean. Or is there a greater problem here? Are the Jimmies and the Joes not good enough? Because I feel like all summer long, all we heard was how much this defensive line was going to be improved and how it had more depth, and they rotated in a number of more bodies. But Is it fixable in your eyes?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's fixable. It's the first game of the season. It could have been jitters or I don't know, something going on. But it's definitely fixable. What you don't want to see is just us consistently not getting pressure on a four-man front. That's just what you don't want to see. If that starts to happen, then we have issues. All right.
Right.
If we have four-man rush and you see game after game after game that they're just running on us, or we can't get to the quarterback, then we're going to have issues. But I wouldn't worry about that, till game 3, 4. After that, we'll see how they respond, because obviously I think that's probably going to be a big thing in meetings is, hey man, our D-line did a terrible job. Like, we got to pick it up this week. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be an emphasis. And especially, we have Avalos as head coach, so he's probably in there screaming at meetings, knowing him, you know what I mean? So, yeah, he's probably getting after them. Because, if you look at the game, the one dude that was getting sacks and pressures got injured halfway through. You know what I mean? Him and Matlock were the only dudes. Everyone else were just, glued onto blocks. So it was unfortunate, man.
Yeah, I know that they've been working on that a lot in practice this week, shedding, blockers, not getting stuck, if you will, I guess.
Yeah.
Shea, really quick, like when you have an offensive playbook, I know that you kind of narrow that thing down to some of the things that you think are really going to work against a specific opponent. Does it work the same way on defense? Like, how much of the playbook are you using, Shea, when you go into a game against, like a UCF and on that note, you mentioned kind of like trying to mix up bringing different exotic pressures. Like, how hard is that to just kind of like shift on the fly and start doing in the middle of the game, Shea?
I think you have a pretty good defensive playbook going into a week, and obviously some things are gonna work better than others. And I think throughout the game, obviously you have your base stuff that you're gonna do and that you've been running all week, and then once you get into the game, we kind of see how things go throughout the game. But as far as like exotic pressures and things like that, those are kind of just change ups. You don't want to be running those, every play or every other play, because you'll just get gashed on it. It's definitely a change up. It's situational. So really, let's say you're running 2 or 3, base plays, and then you got a few exotics in there. That's pretty much it. You have a lot of other things that go into it as far as game planning and, switching up coverages depending on their formation and, D-line stunts and games and things like that. But for the most part, it's just a few plays with a few couple exotics in there.
Yeah, I know. We're going to mix it up today, fellas, too. We got a little video that we can even, play throughout the podcast. We were down in Orlando last week, so we were on the sidelines. And Shane, how backbreaking is it when you can't stop the run as a team? I know it's like frustrating because the defense can't get off the field, but the offense can't get on the field. So like, how like backbreaking can it be for an entire team when you just struggle to stop the run?
It's tough because obviously on the offensive side, you get what we felt at the ball 7 minutes the entire second half. That is, I just can't believe that. Like 7 minutes for an entire half. So for offense, you can't score, and for a defense, you can't get off of the field. Giving it back so fast, you're not able to get off the field. Not even worry about catching your breath. You're not able to adjust because they're not even able to get in there and talk and be coached on the sideline because it's 3 and outs and you're back out there. There's no break. You're right back on the field. So I think that played a huge role, especially in that second, and them being able to control the game.
Mm-hmm. I look at the offensive side of the ball, and I think I'm going to kind of echo what Shea did on the defensive side of the ball. I think a lot of those problems are fixable. I think the offensive line has to come, a little way here in a short amount of time. But not to make excuses, they were playing with a rotation for most of that game that they hadn't really even practiced with before up front. Jake Stetz went down just 27 plays in. He's been very durable throughout his career. I know that you prepare for the unexpected, but I don't know if Boise State was prepared for that, because all of a sudden they had to put Will Farah back at left guard after removing him after just, a handful of plays. And so he goes back into left guard, and then they put Garrett Curran, who's kind of battling a couple injuries, in at right guard. And so that lineup, including the backup center and Dante Harrington, I mean, that front five, in the exact order, was something that they hadn't really practiced before. I mean, Shane, how hard is it to overcome something like that? And again, I know that it seems like an excuse, and I know we're going to get coach speak saying, hey, be prepared for every scenario. But with how much those guards pull and how much they move and whatnot in this new offense, I mean, how much of a detriment is it to not really run that lineup out there and test it before?
It's tough because, I mean, you're in camp all those 3 weeks. You're practicing at a position. Obviously, you know your primary position where you're going to be at. You're going to have more focus there. So when you're pulling, you see how other guys on the other side of the line, how they kind of attack, how they block, how they do things. And so when you get switched up, you're in another position. Even though you might know where you're going, you might not know how fast this guy pulls or how fast this guy crashes down, all those different things and all the different movements on the line. You don't know how the other guys that you haven't been practicing with because you don't have any chemistry. I'm pretty sure we probably never heard anybody talk about the chemistry on the O-line, but obviously there is chemistry with how they move. Some guys are faster, some guys are slower, some guys are more aggressive, some guys are, you have to know what you're going into. I think obviously that throws them a loop. That's big. Yeah. It's something that probably never gets touched on. That definitely makes a difference.
Okay, so Shea, as a former defensive lineman, when you see an opposing offensive line all of a sudden just kind of moving bodies in and out and all around, what goes through your mind at that point in time?
Loving it, man. Because those guys, obviously, a guy goes down. Those guys haven't got as much reps during the week. They haven't prepared as much. I mean, they said you could say that there should or they should be preparing as they're going to play, but they just don't do it. It's just human nature. You know what I mean? Yeah. You prepare different if you're starting rather than your backup. That's just the way it is. So, when we see backups going, it's just it's time to get some sacks. It's time to get some TFLs. We're loving that on the D-line for sure.
Yeah. And I got to say, though, too, I mean, in terms of, there might be people listening or watching that are like, wait a minute, how have they never practiced with that rotation? But, I mean, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so many things that you can practice. And in this case, in that game, Boise State was probably almost down to, their C or even D rotation of what they envision as their optimum offensive line. Keikani Okoa Holomalia Gonzalez was out. Maybe he's back this week. We're not necessarily sure, but we'll see. I mean, that's definitely a group who, regardless of who's out there, we're going to have to see them take a jump this week against Utep because they rushed for 20 yards as a team, and they were virtually ineffective on offense, very inefficient at the very least on offense the moment that Jake Stetz went out. When he was in the game, they were averaging right around 6.5 yards per play on offense. When he left the game, that number was cut in over half, only 3 yards per play on offense. And we saw some missed snaps. One of them was bobbled by Hank and put on the deck. What did you guys think of Hank's performance, given kind of all that was going on? And I know that UCF, they outgained Boise State in yardage by quite a bit, but they also had a couple extra possessions. I mean, the pick six basically eliminated an offensive possession for Boise State and put UCF right back out on the field. And then the safety gave UCF almost an additional offensive possession as well. So, Shane, what did you think of Hank's effort, given all that was kind of going on?
I know Hank took a lot of heat for this one, but I don't think Hank played bad. I think obviously there was a few points in the game, obviously at the end, where we could have made a better decision. But I think, to me personally, I think he improved from where he was last year. We didn't see him taking hits. We didn't see him doing some of those mental things last year that he was doing. So I think he took a step forward. Obviously, it might not have been enough to win the game, but I think he took a step forward. I don't think it was bad. I mean, you take away that interception at the end and, he throws interceptions. He has those touchdowns. I mean, it's not a bad performance on paper. Just along with, how often we were on the field how many opportunities we had versus how many times we were able to score on offense. And when you look at it that way, it wasn't too good. But statistically, I don't think it was too bad.
Yeah, I said this last week on the pregame show. This is an offense that needs to achieve first downs. They need to stay in a rhythm. I mean, that's pretty much, any offense out there. But I just feel like with the way that these guys were operating against UCF, not a lot of deep passes in that game. I mean, like, Shea, I'm going to put you on the spot again, but how many throws do you think Hank attempted that traveled over 20 yards in the air? Do you know? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. I do know.
Just from trying to remember, maybe 2.
Exactly.
Close.
2. It was the Hail Mary right at the end of the game, and then the interception that he kind of tried to force in the fourth quarter. But that was kind of it in terms of really trying to stretch the field. So, I'm not even going to get creative with this, Shea. I just asked Shane, what did you think of Hank's performance?
I think to start, he looked really good, and I was like, okay, Hank's controlling the offense well, and I know it was a lot of slants and kind of checks. It looked like, but I mean, it looked like he had real good control of the offense. And then towards the second half, I don't know what happened, if it was play calling or he was just feeling pressured because he was getting hit or pressured a lot. I'm not sure what had happened, but he might have been rattled a little bit in that second half for sure. But as far as like the deep balls down the field, maybe they didn't do that just because they don't have time to protect him for that long. You know what I mean? So I think that could have played a factor in that for sure too, because obviously you need time to protect, and maybe they could have max protect, but then you only have 2 or 3 guys running routes. So it's tough, calling plays and trying to figure out what you need to do and just to get some first downs and get some momentum going. So.
Yeah, I mean, like honestly though, Shea, like I don't even know if like max protect was really a part of this offense though. I mean, I think they had, they were operating out of 3 wide receiver sets, so 1 tight end 80% of the time, and they only had 2 tight ends on the field. Just a few times. I mean, that's very different from what we've seen with past Boise State offenses. And I think you're exactly right. Like the last thing I'm asking Hank Bachmeier to do in the second half of that game is actually hold on to the ball longer. So might we see them stretch the field this week? Yeah, absolutely. Like Tim Plow already told us earlier this week, like he's an aggressive play caller. He's going to want to stretch the field. Just maybe it wasn't the best idea at times last week, asking Hank to hold on to the ball a little bit more. I do think Hank did all right, though. I mean, I think that he also further displayed his toughness, which is clearly like his number one trait. Like he got hit a number of times, and if you go back and you look even before the interception he threw, he was hit on all 4 previous plays in a row, and 3 of the 4 he wound up on his backside. The guy was just trying to make a play for his team to win a ball game, and it's tough to fault him for that. How do you, like, Shane, when you go back and you look at something like that in film, like what's Hank saying to himself? I mean, you regret the interception because that was the result of the play, but you can't regret trying to make a play to win the game, right? Like, how do you correct that?
It's an old thing Coach Pete used to say: football intelligence. We call it FBI. It was part of our one of our foundations, I guess you can say, something that we always talked about. And I think for Hank, I think maybe he didn't necessarily, okay, I'm not saying that he didn't know the down and distance, but obviously know you need it. So maybe a 15-yard throw isn't the play we need on 3rd and 4, or you have the ability to pick it up with your leg. Obviously, you always want to make a play, but you live to see another down. Even if you throw it away there, you still get another down. So I think it just comes back to the intelligence that we always used to talk about. I mean, if just before the play he says to himself, if the throw's not there, I can run it, and he just knows how much space he has and, going forward, I mean, that changes the game. It's huge. I mean, we had tons of time left to score. That wasn't the problem. Yeah. I just think
Shane, you and I kind of had an interaction on Twitter this week, and I'm curious because I pointed this out on that specific play where Steph Cobbs is kind of like that sub-motion guy, and he's coming back across the formation, and Big Cat Bryant, the DN for UCF, just reaches his hand out and spins Steph around almost to the point where it seems like he tackles him. But you were saying like that's actually legal for a guy behind the line of scrimmage. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around on why that's legal. Like I get like maybe not being able to call pass interference by making contact, but sticking your arm out and spinning him around, like that's actually almost a smart move by Big Cat in that situation.
So if the quarterback would have faked it to him and then he tried to run out for that pass and still behind scrimmage, they could have almost tackled him and nothing will be called. Wow. I hate it as an offensive player because I'm trying to catch the ball. But Shea probably can give you a little bit more on how he probably loves that rule.
Yeah,
being able to, some contact before it gets the line of scrimmage.
Shea, pick it up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. We were always taught most of the time when you see a guy coming through, get a hand on him at least. And I think naturally some guys just tend to grab his jersey and, kind of pull him a bit. But like Shane said, it's totally legal. And, obviously it's tough for like a backer or even a DB to get across, if you're in man or whatever it is, even if you're passing off and you're in man, it's tough for the defender to get back on that boot. So, whatever we can do as a D lineman to help out. That's just a smart play by that kid for sure.
It really was, because it looked like Steph was just going to run a little short arrow to the first down marker, and it was going to, could have been a really easy completion. And hey, it might have been option A for Hank just to take that guy right to the flat and move the chains, but that was blown up, and it forced Hank to get out the pocket and then eventually force a throw that he wishes he could have back. Moving on, but still staying on the offensive side of the ball, how special is Khalil Shakir? Shea, when you were here, you played with some of the best ever to put on the the blue and orange. Hey, Shane, you did too, for that matter. Heck, you're one of them. But Shea, how special is Khalil Shakir in your eyes?
Man, he's different, man. He's a different breed. He's so explosive and quick, man. It's just fun to watch. And whenever we get the ball in his hands, man, good things happen. That's why I was surprised. I don't know, if he was injured or what it was. I was surprised that we didn't give him the ball more. He's our guy, you know what I mean? So, times like that when they're coming back and, we're tied or we're down, like you got to get it to your dude, you know what I mean? So I was definitely surprised. I think in the third quarter, he got the ball once or twice, something like that. So I was definitely surprised we didn't get him more. And like I said, it could have been injuries or, something else going on. You just never know what's going on. But, that kid's different, and he's super fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, and we found out after the game, actually, Shea, that some unique transparency, I would say, on Boise State's part, that he was dealing with a little something. So he was on a rep count. Gotcha. And I think at the end of the day, he ended up playing about 20%, I believe. 30% of the offensive snaps. But even a lot of those happened, those last couple of series where it was, kind of almost do or die time. And, Khalil came out this week and said he felt a little closer to healthy, 100%. But Avalos said that he's always going to have the best interest of his players in mind, and just felt like he wanted to limit Shaq and make sure that they have him for the whole season versus, trying to go out there and play 50 some odd plays and maybe have him be out for a longer period of time. So
yeah, you think you would want, when he's in there to give him the ball though, you know what I mean? Just a little bit more. I would have liked to see that. Obviously, I can be a armchair quarterback at home, but definitely he's the dude, on our team. So you would have think that, yeah, he's on a limited snap count, but let's get him the ball as much as we can because he's going to make explosive plays for us. So, yeah. It's, it's hard. It's tough.
Uh-huh. Shane, you were one of the best with the ball in your hands after the catch. So, 3rd and 5, the receiver catches the ball short of the sticks. Are you picking yourself or Shaq to pick up the first down?
I'm personally gonna roll myself, but I like Shaq. To me, especially with he has the number on, so I see the Austin Pettis route running and ability to create separation. but then all in his hands, I see the Titus Young elusiveness. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Shaq is almost like a running back when the ball gets in his hands at times, though. Too. I mean, he has a tremendous skill set, and what he can do after the catch is just phenomenal. 78 of his 91 receiving yards in that game were after the catch. What on that note, Shane, what did you kind of learn about this offense? I mean, they do run kind of a lot of crossing stuff in that game. Not a ton of vertical presence in the offense. What did you think of that type of offense?
I think we have guys who can do that kind of stuff because we have speed. So the crossing routes and stuff work. But I kind of still feel like we got away from the crossing routes. We didn't continue to do what was working. I mean, it was working. So, we weren't complaining in the first half, but we stopped. We got away from it, which is just, it was weird. I think the vertical game is missing. And I think Static's one of those guys too. He's one of those run out the catch guys. So we have a few, and then you also have CT who can run with the ball in his hands after he catches it. It's just I feel like we didn't get the ball in their hands enough.
Yeah, and you know what, Tim Plow, again, refreshing accountability and transparency. This week the offensive coordinator said like that's something he regrets. Like they got away from that a little bit in the second half, and he wishes they could go back to that quick passing game and maybe utilize that a little bit more. I will say this too, like I feel like some of those drives were just going to be irrelevant from the get-go because of how they started at times, whether it be a botched snap, an immediate tackle for loss on, maybe just not trying to bounce a run to the outside that happened one time instead of just there was a, just taking advantage of a clear alley and hitting it, So they're moving. They're behind the sticks more often than not. It seemed like in the second half. So I don't even know if there was an answer for half of the stuff they did. But as we do move forward and we look at Utep and we try to fix all this and stay optimistic, level of confidence that Boise State in their home opener this week will come out and play better at home. Shea?
Yeah, it's going to happen, man. I know Avalos is getting on those dudes, especially defense. And, like I said, the D-line just for their performance. So, these dudes are going to come out with a fire lit under their butts, man, and come out hot. I think it's going to be a blowout for sure.
Shane, what is game day like on the Blue? Because as of today, it has been 642 days since the last non-limited capacity crowd at Albertson Stadium. How much of a difference does a jam-packed Albertson Stadium make on game day, Shane?
It is wild. I want to say either my first or second game was at the stadium was the BYU 6-7 game where I've actually heard the crowd so loud that it felt like the ground was shaking. It was probably the loudest I've heard it in my life. So that crowd be a factor. It's huge.
Yeah, Taysom Hill at quarterback for BYU. Mike Atkinson, a.k.a. Canadian Bacon, with the rumble into the end zone the other way. The only score of the game for Boise State. BYU goes for 2 at the end. They don't get it. I mean, that was, when it comes to offensive fireworks, that game had like none. But it still is one of my more memorable games that I've covered, over at Boise State. And then there's like the fact that fans there, I mean, they're one way or another. Like this isn't even like a homer thing to say. Like they're really good at generating false starts by the opposing offense. So Shane, like when you hear a false start on third down as a pass rusher, like that has to be like a gift. That has to be like the best thing ever, because even if it's 3rd and 1, all of a sudden it makes that opposing offense so much more one-dimensional. They probably have to drop back to pass. So like as a former pass rusher, like how appreciative are you, however it comes in any way, shape, or form, when there is a false start on third down?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's the best thing that can happen to the defense, especially, third downs. They're important, man. You know what I mean? And, you got to get it, and you got to get a stop on D. So anytime the crowd is hype and we get a false start, it just, it gets us pumping that much more. You know what I mean? And, going from like a 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6, that's a big difference, man. Big difference, all right? Because 3rd and 6, they're for sure probably pass. I mean, 98% of the time they're going to be passing it. So we can, set our ears back and get after the quarterback there. Whereas in 3rd and 1, we kind of got to be cautious of, rushing the quarterback, getting behind him, or playing pass, and then they run it. So yeah, anytime the crowd's hype and we get that false start on the defensive side, man, we love it. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, Boise State's been one of the best in the country. I should say Bronco Nation has been one of the best in the country at generating some of those false starts. Just outside of the obvious, just crowd noise, like what is the best part about playing on the blue? And Shane, we'll start with you.
The best part about playing on the blue, man, I just gotta say, it's probably the man. They're all. I mean, we have our certain fans we know where they're gonna be game. It's awesome. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, I always hear, well, can you see on the field? Is Grant? And obviously we practice out there, so it's normal. But it's just, I think just along with the fans and then the atmosphere, it's just I don't feel like it's a comparison to anywhere else.
Really? Hey, Shea, you've played at a lot of big venues, and I mean, I'm not going to go all the way out and say we need to compare it to the NFL or anything like that. But I mean, how memorable is it stepping foot on the blue versus maybe some of the other places you've played?
Yeah, I think, just to go off what Shane said, man, the atmosphere, it's totally different in college than it is NFL. And it's, I don't know if it's the energy or what. I think, fans are just more engaged, I would say, in college games than they are in the NFL. NFL, it's like, oh, it's a cool thing to do. Let's go watch and, drink some beers and such. In college, it's like, hey, all the students there, you got younger crowd, you know what I mean? So just the atmosphere, and it's just totally different, man. And I mean, for me, I'm a local guy, you know what I mean? So playing on the blue, that's like home for me. So it just felt home. And when you get a sellout crowd, there's nothing like it. And it's definitely by far the blue was my favorite place to play. And obviously, like I said, I mean, a lot of that has to do with it, being my hometown and being my home state for sure.
I mean, are you saying like favorite place, including the NFL, Shea?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there was cool stadiums and atmospheres in the NFL, but the blue takes the cake, man. And I think I'm biased because I grew up, loving the Broncos when they were terrible. You know what I mean? Like they had games against New Mexico State and North Texas and barely getting by, or even losing. You know what I mean? When they were bad. So for me, it was just a dream to play on, to be a Bronco. So nothing compares to that. And, my goal wasn't to ever get to the NFL. It kind of just happened. You know what I mean? So, my goal was to be a Bronco, and, that was the best time of my life for me, for sure. So give it to the fans.
Shea, whether it be an opposing coach or an opposing player, do you ever remember, like, whether it be somebody a little awestruck by playing on the blue or thinking it was a competitive advantage for Boise State? Or just somebody disrespecting it? Do you have like a story like that, Shea?
I remember dudes asking, like, do birds really crash on in blue and stuff? When I went to the NFL, I'm like, I don't. They poop on it for sure. I know all the geese are pooping on it all the time. I don't know if they're crashing into it, but there's a lot of crap everywhere. So, but no, man, I don't think there's a competitive advantage. I think the hardest thing is when you're watching film and it's blue on blue jersey. I think that's the hardest thing. But when you're out there on game day, there's no competitive advantage to blue on blue. I mean, you would say the same thing about green on green, right? You know what I mean? So the only thing that's different is the film is kind of tough to see sometimes. But other than that, there's nothing.
I think that is like one thing that kind of gets lost in this. Is like that everybody thinks about it too literally on game day and how you guys might blend in with the blue. But if you go back to like Rocky Long's days at SDSU, that was like his concern. It was just like it was hard to watch film. It was hard to identify numbers. The best part was, when a certain school, I believe it was actually BYU, made a case that Boise State shouldn't wear blue on the blue, and then BYU left the Mountain West, and Boise State was still kind of stuck with that rule for a moment. When they brought the gray in with the blue letters, I feel like those were even harder to see in terms of the numbers on the blue and watching film. At least that was my experience. But Shane, do you have any funny stories about opponents or coaches?
I don't, but I'm just curious. Didn't BYU wear all blue when they played their bowl game in the Idaho Potato Bowl?
It'd be hilarious to go back and look. That would be funny.
I feel like they did.
I
feel like they were all blue.
My understanding, right? My understanding of the situation is that there were teams currently in the Mountain West when that rule was in effect that they might not have liked Boise State wearing blue on blue, but they took kind of the brunt of the blame when really it might have been BYU that made the case for that to be changed, and then BYU wasn't. They left the Mountain West, so. Just kind of an interesting thing, obviously those are maybe some tall tales or whatever, but that is my understanding of the situation.
That'd be a BYU thing to do for sure, was complain about it and then come wear blue on blue. So I'm definitely wouldn't be surprised.
I'm going to confirm that in 2018, BYU definitely wore royal blue uniforms, all royal blue on the just to throw it out there.
Thank you to our fact-checking partner in this podcast. Appreciate it, Shane.
Love it.
That's pretty crazy here. Pretty fitting, pretty funny. BYU obviously later on the schedule, but Boise State's going to Provo this week. I mean, as we move towards the end of this show, what are the predictions? What do you? I mean. It's so funny because at the end of the day, when we talk about keys to the game, I mean, in all actuality, keys to the game could be the same freaking keys every game, and it's stop the run and run the ball. And if you can do those things, and life just gets easier afterwards. But what are you guys maybe looking for, and what are maybe some of your predictions for this game that's kicking off on Friday over on the blue against Utep?
I hate to jump, and overlook a team, but I think it's huge because the last time I saw our D-line play like they played was against Oklahoma State. We weren't able to get pressure. The quarterback just sat back there. And so I think we have to show on film that we can create some pressure, because if not, next week, who do we have coming to town? We got Oklahoma State, probably a better O-line. And if I'm Oklahoma State and I saw what I just saw in the CF game, I'm going in with the same game plan to run the ball and to know I can kind of hold on to it a bit, and where, the routes will have time to develop. I have time to throw it, all those kind of things. So you messed up on this last week, you have there and show that it's not a weakness and that it's more of a strength. And so even if it's a lesser team, you have to put it on tape, because if not, I'm coming in with the same game plan. And I'm sure that's what UTEP is planning to do. They're planning on coming in and they want to try to run the ball. If I'm them, that's what I'm doing.
A show me week for the defensive line. Shea, what do you think?
Love it, man. Same thing I was going to say. I think that was a big glaring issue, man, last game. I mean, there was other issues too. But, for me, I think, we just got to see improvements. O-line, D-line, just getting after those dudes. We got to be able to run the ball, man. So, it had to be a huge emphasis this week, stopping the run the ball, obviously. And we can say, like you said, we can say that every single week, right? Because, obviously that's what you have to do. You have to stop the ball and stop the run and run the ball. I think that's going to be big for us. And like Shane said, the D-line got to step up, man. It's got to be better, because if it's not, it's going to be a long year. And next week going to be a long game. So we have to see improvement there, and I'm sure we will. I'm thinking 48-7 BSU blowout.
Apparently the D-line's going to eat then on Friday. I'll ask you for your prediction in just a second here, Shane. But I want to bring up something really quick. I went back and I listened to the entire interviews of the defensive coordinator, Spencer Danielson, the offensive coordinator, Tim Plow, and the D-line coach, Frank Miley. and I believe it was on 25 different times in their interviews total, they somehow referenced that this is on coaching. Almost accepting, kind of trying to take the blame and maybe I would say take some heat off the players. Do you think there is something to that, to maybe try to remove that blame from the players, put it on them, and in turn, maybe the players kind of recognize that, and maybe the players realize, hey, kind of on us to execute this stuff as well. I mean, do you think there's am I just blowing that out of proportion, Shane, or do you think there might be something to that?
No, for sure. It's that they're sending signals, but sometimes read between the lines. But I think the players know it too. I mean, I know the worst part was having to go watch that film, and I know something I used to always hear when I was at Boise State was it wasn't a sin to get blocked; it was a sin to stay blocked. And so I'm seeing that a lot this week, and they watched themselves on film not be able to get off blocks and just trying to take the bullet for them. But sometimes it's about the Jimmies and the Joes.
Yeah. It's a Friday game. It's not a Saturday game, but let's just hope that none of the Broncos are sinners when they go to church on Sunday, I guess, and just get off blocks. Get off blocks. So we heard 48-7 from Shea. Shane, what do you got?
48-7. That's
the big man. You know what though? Shea's a fan favorite, so I almost think he's just playing to that at this point in time. Say 48-7.
I mean, come on, guys! It's Utep, bro. We're not talking. We're not talking Oregon or someone in the Pac-12. It's Utep here. Yeah. It's got to be a blowout here. Come on.
God, first home game. I feel bad for Coal Valley Christians playing this week. 48-7.
We got high standards, man. All right,
I'm going
good enough.
13-42.
Okay, that's a little more in line with the spread. I believe the spread on this game is like 26-27. So that's a little more in line with the spread. Still expecting Boise State to cover. Hey, I think if Boise State walks off the blue on Friday, scoring over 40 points and allowing under 20, I'm going to say, I think that they can at least use this as a step forward and have some confidence going into the Oklahoma State game. And I know how. How hard is it not to look at Oklahoma State? Like, I don't want coach speak. How many of the guys in the locker room this week are still recognizing the fact that Oklahoma State's coming to town next week, Shane?
I mean, the good thing is Oklahoma State didn't play well at all last week.
True.
You have to take it with a grain of salt. It's all about matchups. All those. So, I think we're in a position right now just to focus on this week. But yeah, we know they're coming. Like I said, I'm already thinking about it myself because the UCF reminded me of the old Oklahoma State game. So yeah. I'm hoping that these guys get it all together, put some good things on film, and best believe I'm going to be watching that Oklahoma State game this week.
Hey, Shea, you played for two of the most boring yet focus-driven coaches in all of football, any level, in Chris Peterson and Bill Belichick. But at the same time, did you ever peek ahead at an opponent coming your way on a schedule, especially when it was like Oklahoma State on the blue, which, I mean, that just doesn't happen. This will be one of the most unique matchups in the history of Albertson Stadium.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's tough. But I mean, after a performance like last week, like Shane said, I think you're really focused on just getting better and doing better this week and taking care of business on Friday rather than looking ahead. I honestly do. I don't think they're looking ahead. I think the coaches are getting after them enough to focus this week. And, that's what we got to have, that mentality, not worry about what's ahead. We got to be mindful and focus on getting better this day, this week.
Yeah, I'm just going to go right in line with the spread. I'm going like 40-15. I don't even know how UTEP's going to score exactly 15 points, but I'm just going to say that it happens, and that's just what I'm going to roll with for this one. I think that I do think it's a better performance. I'm really excited to see, especially if this offensive line is a little more healthy. or at least has a week to practice exactly how they envision it on game day, I'm eager to see how they do. I want to see a healthy Khalil Shakir, which apparently he's back at 100%. I want to see some more touches for Steph Cobbs, because I think, man, that guy, I really think he can be explosive in this offense. And I mean, I'd say the same about CT, but we kind of already have seen what CT can do. We know what he can do if he gets a few touches. Would love to see him more for the kid that goes by the nickname Static Shock. Actually, Shea, do you know why he goes by Static Shock?
Static Shock.
Like superhero.
Right? It's a show, right? Static Shock.
Yeah. Shea, do you know Shea?
Well, I don't. Never heard of it.
Okay. Apparently he's a superhero of some sort that's kind of his alter ego. Kind of got it as a kid, and he kept
I love it.
So
he's got that Mamba mentality, man. I love to see it.
Yeah.
That dude has some hands, man. Like you said, I'd love to see him get the ball some more, man. He was cool.
Yeah.
He was cool to watch.
Oh, man.
Well. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll bring that up really quick, because when you go, I mean, like, he was catching some passes that were almost like beyond him. Like, the ball seemed like it was almost beyond his body, and he was still like hauling those things in. So I think I don't know. I'm just really excited to see what he can do if he gets a few more touches. We saw that balanced offense in the first half. A lot of guys getting involved. The first 9 completions to 9 different receivers. If they can do that again and do it consistently, then obviously it's going to really stress a defense if they got to worry about a bunch of people. As Billy Bones, a backup wide receiver, said, they feel like now this offense you have to worry about a whole team, not just a couple of players. And so we'll see if Utep can slow down the whole team, or if the whole team gets after the Miners this week. But fellas, it's been another fun day. We appreciate it. Mark it down, everybody. Shea McClellin, 48-7. Shane Williams-Rhodes, 42-13. We will see who's right. We will hold you accountable. And as Shea said, bad run defense last week should have resulted in some decks. So whoever loses between you two, maybe he's gonna have to go out and run some decks. I'm just kidding. We would never make you guys do that. We want to keep it alive for the podcast.
Do something else, man.
Right. Fellas, it's been fun. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the game on Friday, and we will see you next week right here on Jay's Sports Bar with Jay, Shea, and Shane.